To the right of me here we have the Philips 328M6, which is a curved monitor with 1800R curvature and comes in Australia at 649 Aussie dollars. If you're in America or in the UK, I currently can't find it for sale. It may be under a different alias. I'm not too sure, but I will update the description below when I learn more on this. But today we're going to be going through the most important figures. 1440p panel. 31.5 inches of diagonal screen, 16 by 9, and also supports 144 Hz refresh rate, as well as supporting FreeSync and also adaptive sync out of the box. So you will need an AMD graphics card, however, for FreeSync support. But with that aside, get your knives and forks out because we're going to start eating those meat and potatoes right after the intro. Welcome back to Tech Yes City, and now Philips are advertising on the box 4 milliseconds grade array response times. So we had to test this, 4 different modes. Off, fast, faster, and fastest. Essentially overdrive. The UFO tests showed that both the faster and fastest settings were pretty good at 144 Hz. As for the fast and the off modes, I do not recommend them, though starting with off, this was transitioning over 15 plus milliseconds, which made 3 different images at once being displayed on the same frame. This will confuse your eyes, make no mistake about it. Fast, on the other hand, did help drop this, though we still had transitioning over 2 frames, where at 144 Hz, the average frame transition between a frame is around 7 milliseconds, 1000 divided 144. So ideally we want response times that are faster than this. In a perfect world, under half of this is optimal, so around 3 to 4 milliseconds. Of course, 1 millisecond being the best, but you're not going to get that on a VA panel, which is what this features right here. It also has 1800R curvature and quantum dot technology. So that is helping bring out the reds and also the greens as opposed to the blues. But faster, however, back to the response times. This provided 8 to 9 milliseconds of average response time, still, however, slightly transitioning over 2 images in the same frame. And then we go on to fastest, which provided a very playable 5 to 6 milliseconds transitions on greater grays and also dark grays, though the whites were still slightly lacking a little bit, but optimal in CSGO regardless. Now there is an input lag on and off option, which ironically did not just help with the input lag, so you would want to leave it on of course, but also when it was turned off, it made the pixel response times go crazy and noticeably bad. The 1000 FPS camera showed this as well, where we got slower response times as well as slower input lag. So go figure, it's not just the actual response time settings, but it's also the input lag settings. So though with it on, we had the best frame coming in at 9 milliseconds total input lag on the system. Very, very impressive, and then averaging out to about 15 to 16 milliseconds, with the worst frame coming in at 24 milliseconds. Again, this is total system input lag, and these are very, very impressive numbers, scoring up there with some of the other monitors we've had around here, like the ViewSonics and the Azuses. So I'd guess anywhere from 0 to 10 milliseconds with low input lag option switched on would be realistic for this monitor. Though basically in regards to response times and input lag, I think there are only 2 options for this monitor if you are gaming. And that is the low input lag option switched on from the monitor OSD, as well as 144 Hz enabled with either the faster or the fastest setting for the pixel response times. Me personally, I prefer the fastest setting. Playing CSGO for a little while did make this the most comfortable setting for my eyes, also at 144 Hz. However, when I did drop it down to 60 Hz, there was some very noticeable overdrive kicking in here, artifacting, and they were huge. I mean, you could see the blacks clearly popping out where they shouldn't be. So basically, I don't recommend playing games on this monitor with anything but 144 Hz. Now also going through the OSD, it's very clearly laid out, very simple to use. One button with a directional setting like a D-pad, and you can access everything very quickly. Brightness settings as well as contrast, as well as manual color control, white balance, and also a low blue light mode, which has 3 different settings besides off, so 4 in total, to enable low blue light if you're using it at night. However, me personally, I still prefer flux from the actual software itself because that's automatically controlled. Though quickly mentioning power consumption with this monitor, we had about 40 watts at 160 CCD brightness, and then at max brightness setting of 100, we had about 60 watts usage. Now with the LEDs turned on or off, there was about a 2 watt difference as well. Though speaking of brightness, they advertised 400 CCD on the box. We were getting about 250 in the real world, with this thing color brated at sRGB setting with max brightness on 100. 47 setting gave us 160 CCD, which is what I prefer personally. And then the white uniformity was really good across this whole panel. The grays and the dark grays as well were pretty good, but on the whites there was a slight shift to the right of the panel, and then the backlight bleed wasn't noticeable. There was no visible cross hatching as well when we pulled up an orange backdrop. Now quickly continuing over with color balance and the monitor itself. There is different modes. They've got FPS and a few other preset modes. However, I would like to see a cinema mode with higher saturated colors, lower gamma setting, and also a dedicated image editing mode as well. Say for instance, turning the sRGB on with the brightness at a 160 CCD. There was pretty plain settings, the FPS being good for FPS games, where it ups the gamma and also ups the blue as well. And the color balance so you can see shadows easily. But besides that, it was lacking a few options in the preset menu. But also speaking of the color balance itself, it was very accurate out of the box. I'm surprised this thing was really as close as it gets to a color brated monitor without Philips themselves calibrating this out of the factory. It was so close in fact that only really the darker tones were slightly off. All the colors were really accurate. The mids and the high keys were pretty much spot on as well. So very impressive job. If you're into gaming and doing video editing and you only can afford one monitor, this might be the monitor to consider. But let's move on now with some extra things on this monitor. First of all, the speakers. It's stereo speakers, and surprisingly the audio coming out of these speakers is very good. So good to the point where if you are predominantly a headphone user but you wanted backup speakers, these would definitely do the job. Of course, it's a little bit tinny due to it not having a subwoofer, but the mids are definitely present and they do give out an enjoyable experience both gaming and listening to music, and the volume is great if you're just sitting at a normal 80 centimeter position from the monitor. Now also they advertised flicker free. When I was testing up to 8,000 Hertz on the camera, it didn't show any flicker at all, and there's an ambient lighting under the monitor itself, which you can set to a static color if you wish to, or if you leave it on auto, it will match the colors on the desktop itself and then change the lighting to that. It's also got different brightness settings to choose from too. Also, before we get on to that conclusion, little intricates, there is a smart contrast setting and also a pixel orbiting setting. When I turned these on, I didn't notice a whole lot of difference. Viewing angles on the both vertical and horizontal angles were phenomenal, so it is a really good upgrade from a TN panel. And then of course the colors out of the box are pretty solid though. Out of the box, you will want to put this on low input lag mode and set it to sRGB and drop the brightness down to around 45 to 55 in my opinion. Those are some little nitpicks with this monitor. We've got big LEDs on the bottom. I think they're 50-50 and they're diffused, 5 on each side. They do flicker and they do look a little bit obvious. I would like to see them diffuse these LEDs a bit more. As well as the coating on the monitor itself, it is a tad bit stronger than what I'm used to. So I'm used to more of a little bit slightly semi-gloss finish. This is a little bit more on the side of a matte finish to a gloss finish. So your mileage may vary, of course. It blocks out the sun very well. But there's also no ultra low motion blur setting and also HDR, which has an auto setting. And when we turn this on in Windows, it just looks bad on everything. I have tested other monitors in the past where HDR did look good depending on the scenario, but I turned it on in this and everything's just washed out. Even on demos on YouTube and games, it just looks bad in general. So I recommend just turning HDR off on this monitor in general. I would like to see a demonstration where it actually works better than the original picture that you're getting out of this monitor. Anyway, here we are now at conclusion time. This monitor right here, phenomenal build quality. The stand is very high quality, looks very modern. It's also got height adjustment as well and tilt, but it doesn't have both horizontal nor vertical swivel. So that is something I would like to see, especially the horizontal swivel. But it does have a lot of input options. You've got SVGA, you've also got 2 display ports, both supporting 1.1 and 1.2 standard, and a HDMI 1.4 and HDMI 2.0 in. So 5 display inputs in total. And that leaves us at the price range now, 649 Australian dollars. That's what you can currently pick this thing up for. And at this price, it packs a lot of value. They're trying to differ themselves by offering some ambient lighting on the bottom, but in terms of the make itself and the overdrive settings, they've done a phenomenal job. I like this monitor Probably the best out of all the 32-inch 144Hz panels I've tested. The fastest setting at 144Hz low input lag mode is really good. Not to mention the speakers on board are really solid as well, will give out a great sound, and then the picture itself is beautiful as well. So Philips have done a great job, and this is the first Philips monitor I've had come through here in review. So ultimately, I can recommend this thing. I don't know when it'll come out in the US or the UK, but I will update the description once I have more information. But besides that, I hope you guys enjoyed this review. If you did, then be sure to hit that like button. And also, if you tried a Philips monitor before, let us know in the comments what you thought of it. Do you think it was worth the money? If not, let us know why not. If so, let us know why. Love reading your thoughts and opinions as always, and I'll catch you in another tech video very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.